So they're very professional. This is the job they have to do. They're there to do a job and they just do it.
I'm very excited to be speaking with Cheryl Hess and Shashwati Talukdar, the directors of Marriage Cops. Thank you so much for the time. I genuinely appreciate this.
Thank you.
Thank you, Steve.
Glad to be here.
I am too. I'm glad that you're here because I love this film. I thought Marriage Cops was such a wonderful piece. Where did it come from?
Okay, so Shashwati and I are old friends and colleagues from graduate school, from film school back in Philadelphia. And then after graduation, Shash moved away to Taiwan and she was back in New York and we were catching up over coffee. And it was just one of those vague, like, oh, we should work together and make something in India. And then I happened to stumble across this article about women policing initiatives in India. And I had worked as a camera person on television shows that were law enforcement based, and Shashwati's previous feature had a law enforcement component. And so I knew that police stations were really, there's always something going on if you're in a police station, like it's never boring. And it's sort of an interesting place where people from all parts of society intersect. And so I shared it with her and we went on a research trip and we did something and we looked at an initiative in Mumbai and then we went to Dehradun, which is Shash's hometown, and that's where we found the marriage cops. And we knew immediately that that was it.
It's pretty amazing, and it's really one of the things I love is seeing them work as they're working with these families, and but there seems to be a genuine I mean, certainly it seems to be. There is a genuine fight for women's rights in this film and in this uh, what's the word? In this organization, I guess is the word I'm looking for. Um, but at one point they talk about the helpline as a form of protection. Can you talk about that for your experience being down there? What was that like?
Well, so as both Sharon and I like to sort of characterize some of what we witnessed, it's the helpline is almost sort of weapons of the week.
Hmm.
So a lot of women were there. They were there for very specific and very concrete reasons. They weren't looking for something that was going to be a long-term solution. They needed a solution that was going to be effective in the near term. So a woman wants formula for her baby. Where does she get the money? Because her husband's irresponsible, feckless fellow. So she goes to the police. Or somebody needs a separate kitchen from their mother-in-law because that's creating a lot of conflict within the family. What do? The helpline is there, the police are there, and you sort of leverage whatever means you have in order to get what you need in order to run your life. And that's how people were using it, which was very sort of to begin with, it's sort of counterintuitive because when you hear sort of counseling and marriage counseling, your expectation is of, psychologists in a quiet office, sort of talking through relationship problems. And of course, that's not what's happening. What's happening is something very, very, very different. Yet, through all of these things, some sort of help is being rendered to the people who are coming in considerable amount of distress sometimes.
Yeah, I mean, we see people dealing with all sorts of situations in this film, and yet, the office is fighting for reconciliation over divorce. I love the part where they say this isn't the Western culture. You can't just leave when you want, sort of thing. I was wondering if you could talk about that, about the effectiveness of this. Because we see these families really struggling with the idea of reconciliation.
Well, um, what happens in, I think, a country like India, which doesn't have a lot of social safety nets and a lot of facilities for people, you're very dependent on your social network and your family and the community at large. And therefore marriage is would you say it's like the entire village, the
Right.
entire community, the entire family is very involved in your marriage. And therefore there is a lot of interest in making sure a couple stays together, even if they don't get along, which is pretty much, what one of the council members sort of states. We're here to preserve the great institution of Indian marriage. And but of course, it doesn't always make sense that you sort of do that. So one of the couples in our film actually does get divorced eventually, because that's the right decision for them. But there is a lot of pressure to sort of stay together. And
I think Josh said something interesting the other day, was that, which hadn't really occurred to me, that if a marriage breaks up, especially if it's in a smaller village, it can have repercussions outside of just that one relationship. And just kind of the bonds of society in that village. Like someone runs a business and then they can't do business with this other family anymore because there was this divorce. So you have to sort of, to watch marriage couples, you kind of have to reposition your ideas of marriage, right? Like you can't, it's kind of apples and oranges in a way. I mean, the human emotions are real, but it's just not the same. I mean, if you went to a counseling session here, a marriage counseling session, your entire family, extended family would be in tow. And that was like a daily occurrence. Like it was, when you see the hallways, it's just the couple, and then both families from both sides are there at this counseling. They're not inside the counseling, but they're like, sometimes they would be called in afterwards. If it was extended family issues, the police would kind of be like, okay, bring them the parent, and they take statements from the parents and from other family members as well, depending on what the problem was. But yeah.
Well, and I know there's more than one scene like this, but I'm thinking of the one scene where I think it's the aunt comes in and says, no, let me speak. And they said, well, who are you? It's like, well, I'm this person. Okay, go ahead. And they're taking down the statements of the next person. And you see that sort of communal impact of these relationships. But I mean, these are hard cases. These are very difficult things to navigate. And we see, I think they actually say, I think it's like out of the last 150, they've had 20 successful reconciliations or something. You're like, it's got to take a toll on the staff. What was that like for you both, speaking with them? Because I think they say this is as much more mental labor than it is physical.
Well, for the staff, it's a posting in the sort of career as policewomen. And because it's usually policewomen who are running the office. And they come to it from very much from that background. So they're very professional. This is the job they have to do. They're there to do a job, and they just do it. And it's kind of amazingly, it's sort of amazing the amount of work they actually put in, and the long hours and the grit, and they're so sort of good humored at the end of it all. And I think they sort of like balance how they sort of personally feel, which is often a lot of sympathy for the women who are coming through, but they have to balance it with their roles as policewomen.
Yeah, we see those tensions. And I think it's funny too, at one point near the end of the film, one of them is asked, would you still get married? Of course. Which is an amazing statement, because they've been through seeing all of these difficult situations where accountability is necessary. But there's still some hope in the institution from the staff. I think that's very beautiful.
Yeah, I remember during doing research, and India has one of the, even though it's rising percentage wise, it was either the lowest or one of the lowest divorce rates in the world. It's extremely low. It was like 1% or something of couples. And with a population that size, so like the panic is that the percentage is rising incrementally, but compared to other countries like the US, for example, it's like minuscule. The divorce rate is, I don't know what it is in the US currently, but like high. In Canada, I'm not sure either.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know what the percentage is either, but it would be
Much higher than one.
much higher. I would love to hear from you both. Again, thinking of the staff, at the beginning of the film, they tell us that our goal is to show what a successful marriage looks like. Seems to be what the goal is. Um, but did you have conversations of what that looks like to them? Because that sounds great, but I mean, what is a successful marriage for them to help improve?
Just like actually sometimes it's like quite basic as be nice. Don't hit your wife. And basic
Yeah.
stuff like that. It was like very, very simple and don't and
Support your family.
support your family and be
Go-
patient with each other and take care of each other and be concerned about each other's families. It was quite basic. They didn't have like very sort of elaborate sort of definitions or demands.
I think because, and I'm not sure, you have to answer if this is changing. Obviously, traditionally, the woman goes to live with the husband's family. So the woman is living with her in-laws and is expected to contribute to that extended household that's not her own family. Maybe cook for his parents and extended family. And then, obviously the police women are women and they understand that. And so I think a lot of times they were trying to instill the sense you have to be compassionate with your partner because she's in this environment that's not her own. And she needs to be shown some grace because it's not an easy situation. And so I think that was a lesson that they tried to get through. In addition to the, yes, like, don't, no beating your wife and like, whoring, no gambling and give some money so your wife can buy food for your children.
And if there's substance abuse, go take care of that because a lot of cases kind of came through where it's usually the man had like a had an issue with alcoholism or some such thing.
Honestly, it's got to take a toll to see this much brokenness in anything as counseling, whether it's counseling or marriage counseling or what have you. And absolutely, like I think this is, but one thing I appreciate about this office is the practical help that they seem to offer, right? They're really getting down into it and saying, okay, then don't do this anymore. Sign a document. This is what I'm going to do and I'm going to work on and try and make that official. And I think that's pretty incredible. I know we're starting to run out of time, but just as we do that, I was wondering for you both what you hope people take away from Marriage Cops.
I mean, I think one thing it's important to get across is that even though the subject matter can sometimes be grim, that we were really it was really important for us to include some moments that are funny. Like there's moments of levity in between all of the fighting and grim things that happen because
the cops themselves, you see, like I think like one of the things about law enforcement is they see humanity as it's at its worst.
Right.
People are killing each other or they, hitting each other, stuff is getting stolen. So every posting that the police women are going to have is going to involve really terrible things going on. And through all of this, they sort of manage to maintain their good humor. They manage to maintain some humanity.
Mm.
And the way they sort of relate to each other and sort of, the real sort of affection and tenderness they do show to each other and the care they sort of have with some of the people sitting across from them on the table and how they deal with it with humor, with compassion, makes it a very different experience from your normal, I think, like, cop show, right?
But yeah, I mean, in some ways, this is a show about work. I mean, I saw a documentary about work, about a workplace. So you get to see how these coworkers are negotiating their jobs. And yeah, for us, that was also really interesting. I always say that the police station is its own character in the film.
I appreciate that. Honestly, it's such a fabulous piece. I really appreciate it, and the chance to chat with you both. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you.
Congratulations on the film, and have a great day.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Bye-bye.
Thanks. Bye bye.